I am a disposable character in a billionaire romance novel. The female lead married me, used me as a tool to make the male lead jealous, and successfully baited him into coming back to win her over. He tossed me a check, and she gave me a debit card. I took them both, signed the divorce papers without a fuss, and immediately booked a flight to paradise. The plane touched down the tarmac in the Maldives, and I was already in vacation mode, sunglasses on, casually scrolling through my phone. A push notification from Bloomberg popped onto the screen. Damian Grayson of Grayson Enterprises makes public play for X. Victoria Sterling poised for reconciliation and key role in family business. The accompanying photo was a masterpiece of paparazzi gold. Damian Grayson, looking impossibly handsome, held a comically large bouquet of dyed blue roses, staring with soulful intensity at my ex-wife of less than 24 hours, Victoria Sterling. Victoria was, as always, an untouchable portrait of cool elegance in a perfectly tailored white pantsuit, her expression unreadable. But the press release was gushing, spewing phrases like a love rekindled and a perfect match, as if they were seconds away from a shotgun wedding right there on the tarmac. I let out a soft chuckle and shoved the phone back in my pocket. This was good. This was really good. As the token male supporting character in this cliché-ridden novel, my job was simple. Marry the female lead, Victoria Sterling, and for 3 years, play the part of the devoted, unloved husband. I was the stay-at-home spouse who cooked, cleaned, and managed her life, occasionally weathering the storm of her icy remarks. My entire existence served a single purpose: to give the male lead, Damian Grayson, off building his empire abroad, a sense of urgency. He was supposed to storm back like a conquering hero and snatch his woman from my unworthy grasp. And now, the final act had played out perfectly. At the divorce settlement meeting, Damian had shown up, and in front of me, tossed a $5 million check onto the mahogany table. His voice was laced with ice. "Carter, this is for your trouble. Take the money and never show your face in front of Victoria again." My darling CEO wife, Victoria, had followed suit by sliding a debit card across the table. Her tone was just as detached. "There's $20 million in this account. The estate in Greenwich is yours as well. Thank you for taking care of things for the past 3 years. So civilized. 1 part hush money, 1 part severance package." Naturally, I accepted with a gracious smile. As someone who'd read the script, I was acutely aware of my destiny as a footnote in their story. Trying to fight a main character's plot armor isn't brave. It's just plain stupid. So, I gave the performance of a lifetime. First, I contorted my face into a mask of pure heartbreak. Then, with a trembling hand, I signed the divorce papers. Finally, I walked out of that tense conference room with tears welling in my eyes, casting one last, longing look over my shoulder. The second the door clicked shut behind me, I practically had to bite my cheek to keep from grinning. 2 years and 11 months. 1,064 days, to be precise. For that long, I meticulously played the part of the lovelorn husband. My days consisted of grocery shopping, cooking, working out, and reading, all while keeping Victoria's ridiculously large mansion in perfect order. Victoria was a workaholic. We saw each other maybe 3 times a week, and our conversations rarely exceeded 10 sentences. She forgot our anniversary. She forgot my birthday. It was perfect. This kind of hands-off, widowed by work. Marriage was my idea of heaven. No messy emotional attachments, just a role to play. Now the job was done. With $25 million and a Greenwich estate to my name, my life had just jumped from normal difficulty to a cheat code-enabled sandbox mode. Heartbroken? Lingering feelings? You gotta be kidding me. I was ready to lounge on a Maldivian beach and toast to my former benefactors. May they live happily ever after. I'll even swallow the key. For the next 2 weeks, I lived like a boy toy who'd just been dumped by a sugar mama with a ridiculously generous severance package. I rented out an entire overwater villa complex in the Maldives. My daily routine was a grueling cycle of scuba diving, deep-sea fishing, and sunbathing. Occasionally, I'd host a yacht party and invite a crowd of bikini-clad models to liven things up. Meanwhile, news from the States kept trickling in. Damian Grayson had launched a full-scale charm offensive to win back Victoria. He bought her luxury cars, a private island, and even lit up the Chicago skyline with fireworks in her honor. The methods were tacky but effective, and they were trending on Twitter every other day. Victoria's public response remained cool, but anyone with eyes could see that Grayson Enterprises and her family's Sterling Industries were becoming increasingly intertwined. In our world, a merger of capital is the most solid proof of love. A few of my friends called, trying to gauge my mental state. They all thought I was hopelessly, desperately in love with Victoria and were worried I might do something stupid. "Liam, you doing okay, man?" My best friend Leo Miller's voice crackled over the phone. "Plenty of fish in the sea, buddy. Forget her. I'll take you down to Miami next week. We'll party. You'll forget all about that Ice Queen." I took a long drag from a cigar, lounging lazily on a beach chair. "No thanks, Miami's a zoo. Way better vibes here. Hey, speaking of, I saw a limited edition speedboat last week. Can you handle the paperwork for me when you get a chance?" Leo went quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was cautious. "You're really over her?" "Over her?" I laughed. "Dude, if your wife handed you $25 million and asked for a divorce, would you be on your knees begging her to stay?" Another long silence from Leo, this time thick with envy and resentment. "Forget I asked. By the way, does your ex-wife have any sisters?" Asking for a friend. I hung up, feeling fantastic. Life is a performance, and it's all about the acting. Now that the show was over, it was time for a long, well-deserved vacation. But just when I thought I was finally free of the plot, ready to enjoy my life as a carefree millionaire, an unexpected call came through. It was Lynn, Victoria Sterling's executive assistant. She was a sharp, efficient woman who, in the original story, appeared only as Victoria's mouthpiece. When I answered, Lynn's voice was as calm and professional as ever, but I could detect a faint tremor of anxiety beneath the surface. "Mr. Carter, where are you right now?" I raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Lynn, to what do I owe the pleasure? I'm enjoying my newfound freedom, of course. Did Victoria forget something? Or did she decide she paid me too much and want a refund?" She ignored my sarcasm. Her tone was dead serious. "Mr. Carter, you need to return to the States immediately. No, on second thought, don't come back here. Go to Zurich, Switzerland. We arranged a long-term visa for you a while ago. Someone will meet you there. And do not, under any circumstances, touch the money in that account." I froze. What the hell was going on? This wasn't in the script. According to the plot, the disposable husband was supposed to take the money and disappear, never to cross paths with the main characters again. Why was Victoria's assistant frantically telling me to run for the hills? And from the sound of it, something was seriously wrong. "Lynn, you need to tell me what's happening," I demanded, my leisurely mood evaporating as a sense of dread crept over me. "I can't explain over the phone," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Mr. Carter, please trust me. Trust Victoria. Leave your current location immediately. The faster, the better. And listen to me. Do not use your own ID to buy any plane or train tickets." Click. She hung up. I stood there, phone in hand, staring at the brilliant blue ocean as my mind reeled. Trust Victoria? Why would I trust her? In my eyes, she was the aloof female lead who had used me. Her epic romance with Damian Grayson was the main plot of this world. I was just a footnote. Unless, was there something more to this story that I didn't know? My first thought was that it was a trap. Maybe Damian thought $5 million was too generous and decided to have me disappear, making it look like an accident. That kind of thing happened all the time in billionaire novels. But that didn't feel right. With Damian and Victoria's resources, $25 million was a lot of money, but it wasn't enough to kill someone over. Besides, Lynn was Victoria's loyal assistant. Could it be that Victoria had a crisis of conscience? Maybe she felt guilty and was warning me that Damian was coming after me. That made even less sense. In the novel, Victoria was devoted to Damian, despite her cold exterior. She would never betray her one true love for her ex-husband. As I was trying to make sense of it all, my phone rang again. This time, it was an unknown local number. I hesitated for a second before answering. A man spoke in heavily accented English. "Mr. Liam Carter, this is the local police. I regret to inform you that your friend, an American citizen by the name of Leo Miller, has just been detained at Valana International Airport upon arrival. He was suspected of carrying illegal contraband. My blood ran cold. Leo, what was he doing in the Maldives? And detained. He said he was going to Miami. A terrifying thought struck me like a bolt of lightning, connecting all the dots. Leo was my best friend and one of the only people who knew where I was. For someone to get to him so precisely, there was only one possibility. They had been watching me from the very beginning. Lynn's warning, Leo's arrest. The two events snapped together, and the hair on my arm stood on end. This wasn't some romantic drama. This was a real, life-threatening crisis. I hadn't escaped the plot. I'd just fallen from one story into a much deeper, more dangerous one. My carefree vacation had been nothing more than a party under the watchful eye of a predator. I shot up from the beach chair, a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead. I had to get out of here. Now. 3. Without a moment's hesitation, I sprang into action. Lynn's warning echoed in my mind. Do not use your own ID. That meant all official channels of departure were closed to me. I scanned my surroundings. The luxurious resort, which had felt like paradise just minutes ago, now seemed like a gilded cage. Every staff member, every tourist could be a potential spy. I raced back to my villa and threw together a bug-out bag with my passport, cash, and a few changes of clothes. As for the debit card from Victoria and Damien's check, I left them untouched in the safe. Lynn had specifically warned me not to use the money. It wasn't an idle comment. That card was likely a tracking device, or any transaction would immediately pinpoint my location. How was I going to leave? The airport was obviously a no-go. Leo was proof of that. My gaze fell on the vast ocean outside my window. That was it. A few days ago, during one of my parties, I met a local boat captain named Hassan. He ran a side business, offering specialized transport services. For a steep price, he would use his small fishing boat to ferry people who wanted to avoid customs to international waters, where another boat would be waiting. It was highly illegal and incredibly expensive. But right now, it was my only option. I used a burner phone I'd brought for emergencies, connected to the resort's public Wi-Fi, and contacted Hassan through an encrypted messaging app. $500,000. Cash. Midnight tonight at the West Cove. No cameras there. I typed, keeping it brief. Hassan was clearly used to this kind of work. His reply was a single word, deal. With my escape route secured, I felt a sliver of relief. But another problem remained. What about Leo? I couldn't just leave him here. I dialed the U.S. Embassy in the Maldives and, speaking as quickly as I could, explained that my friend had likely been framed and requested consular assistance. After that, I powered down all my devices, removed the SIM cards, and threw them, along with my primary phone, into the ocean. From this moment on, I had to become a ghost. As darkness fell, I changed into a black athletic outfit and, under the cover of night, slipped out of the villa complex like a shadow. The resort security was tight, but during my 3 years as a stay-at-home husband, I'd had a lot of free time. Besides working out, I'd spent countless hours learning to bypass the state-of-the-art security system at Victoria's estate, which was far more advanced than this. I expertly avoided the security cameras and patrol guards, making my way to the designated cove. A small, nondescript fishing boat was waiting in the darkness. Hassan stood at the bow and waved me over. I tossed him a waterproof bag filled with U.S. dollars. He hefted it, a satisfied grin spreading across his face. The boat's engine hummed to life, and we glided silently into the deep, dark sea. Looking back at the glittering lights of the resort receding in the distance, I felt no sense of loss, only the profound relief of a survivor. What was really going on? Was the divorce between Victoria and Damien more than just a plot point in a romance novel? If Damien wanted me dead, why would Victoria's assistant help me? And if it wasn't Damien, then who was it? My mind was a whirlwind of questions, but I knew this wasn't the time to ponder them. The only thing that mattered now was staying alive. The fishing boat tossed on the open sea all night. The next morning, in international waters near Sri Lanka, we rendezvoused with a much larger cargo ship. As I stepped onto the freighter's deck, Hassan gave me a whistle. Good luck, my friend. I had no idea where I was going or what the future held. All I knew was that my destination was Zurich. Lynn had told me to go there for a reason. And that reason, I suspected, held the key to this entire mystery. I, Liam Carter, The man who thought he was just a disposable supporting character had stumbled into a storm far bigger and more dangerous than I could have ever imagined. 4. After nearly a week at sea, I finally set foot on European soil. The journey was grueling. I lived like a true stowaway, hiding in a shipping container, surviving on bottled water and protein bars. By the time I disembarked at the port of Genoa in Italy, I was a mess, unshaven, grimy, looking every bit the part of a homeless drifter. I didn't dare linger. Following the emergency contact instructions Lynn had given me, I found a local fixer. After handing over nearly all my remaining cash, I was shoved into the back of a transport truck and, after a long, bumpy ride, finally arrived in Zurich, Switzerland. Standing on the bustling Bahnhofstrasse, surrounded by the sights and sounds of a city I'd never seen before, I felt like I'd been reborn into a different life. I followed Lynn's instructions to a specific private bank. After giving a name and a passcode, the bank manager respectfully led me to a private room and presented me with a safe deposit box. Inside was a complete set of new Swiss identification documents, a new phone, several anonymous credit cards, and a key to an apartment. The name on the ID was William Lee, but the photo was mine. I finally understood what Lynn meant when she said someone would meet me. Victoria, or the people working for her, had already prepared everything. It was as if they had anticipated this entire scenario and paved a foolproof escape route for me. But why? I moved into the downtown apartment. It was modest but clean, and the refrigerator was fully stocked. I took a long, hot shower, shaved off my beard, and changed into fresh clothes. For the first time in weeks, I felt human again. Then, I turned on the new phone. There was only one contact saved. Lynn. I dialed the number. This time, she answered immediately. "Mr. Carter, you're safe now," Lynn said, her voice filled with palpable relief. "Safe?" I was nearly killed in the Maldives. I shot back, my voice cold with suppressed anger. "Lynn, or whatever your real name is, I think it's time you people gave me an explanation." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then, a voice I never expected to hear came through the phone. "Liam, it's me." It was Victoria. Her voice was stripped of its usual icy authority, replaced by a raw, undeniable exhaustion. I was stunned into silence, unsure of what to say. This woman, who had always been so impossibly distant, who had personally orchestrated my dismissal from her life, was the same person who had just pulled me from the jaws of death. "Victoria," I said, taking a deep breath to steady myself. "What the hell is going on? Is Damien trying to kill me?" "It's not him," she said softly, but her words hit me like a ton of bricks. "The person who wants you dead, the person who has always wanted you dead. It was never Damien." "Then who?" I pressed. "It's his uncle, Arthur Grayson." Arthur Grayson. The name was unfamiliar. In the novel, he was a non-entity, a background character at best. "Why would he want to kill me?" I asked, completely bewildered. "I'm a nobody. He has no reason to." "You're not a nobody." Victoria's tone grew heavy. "Your parents, Robert and Elizabeth Carter. Do you remember how they died?" My heart seized. My parents died in a car accident when I was in college. It was a wound that had never truly healed. The police report said it was driver fatigue. I answered, my throat tight. "They went off a cliff. It wasn't an accident." Victoria's words were slow and deliberate, each one a hammer blow. "It was murder, and the man who ordered it was Arthur Grayson. Your father, Robert Carter, was the CFO of Grayson Enterprises. He stumbled upon evidence that Arthur was using offshore accounts to launder money and embezzle millions from the company. The day before he was scheduled to report it to the board, he and your mother had their accident. My whole body went rigid. The world tilted on its axis. My mind was a blank, and the phone nearly slipped from my grasp. My parents' death was a murder. This fact, a cornerstone of my life's grief that I had never questioned, was now being ripped open, revealing a bloody, horrific truth. I had always thought I was just a character who'd found himself in a novel. But now I realized my life, my family, my pain, it was all real. There was no novel. There were no main characters. The story I thought I knew was, from the very beginning, a massive, intricate lie. Arthur assumed the evidence your father collected was destroyed in the crash. Victoria continued, a cold fury in her voice. But he's a cautious, paranoid man. For years, he's had people keeping tabs on you, just to be sure. So, the pieces started to click into place. Your marriage to me. It was to protect you, she cut in. My grandfather and your grandfather were brothers in arms, the closest of friends. After your parents died, your grandfather went to mine and told him everything. They both knew Arthur was ruthless and that he would eventually come for you. So, they came up with a plan. The plan was for you to marry me, to use the Sterling family name as a shield. As long as you were a Sterling son-in-law, Arthur wouldn't dare touch you. For the last 3 years, you thought I was ignoring you, that I didn't care. In reality, I was intentionally creating distance, making sure everyone saw our marriage as a cold, loveless business arrangement. It was the only way to lay the groundwork for our divorce and make it believable. My head was spinning, so that was it. The coldness wasn't contempt, it was protection. The distance wasn't disgust, it was a disguise. I thought I was her tool to win back Damien. But I was wrong, so incredibly wrong. I was the one who had been kept in the dark, the fool being protected by everyone around me. And Damien, was Damien part of the plan? I asked, my voice hoarse. Yes, Victoria admitted. Damien does have feelings for me, but more importantly, he's my ally. His father and Arthur are bitter rivals. He's been looking for a way to take his uncle down for years. So, we worked together to put on a show about a bitter rivalry over a woman. I finished for her. You wanted to make Arthur believe our divorce was because of Damien. That way, he would let his guard down and believe you had lost the Sterling family's protection, turning you into an easy target. And then you draw him out? Exactly. We could only get him if he made a move first. So, me going to the Maldives, Leo being arrested. That was all part of your plan. The question was sharp, laced with accusation. No, she said instantly. Sending you to the Maldives was my idea. I wanted you as far away from this mess as possible until it was all over. I never imagined Arthur would move so quickly, so brutally. He must have bribed someone close to you to find out where you were going. He was willing to frame your best friend to force your hand. I underestimated him. Liam, I'm so sorry. Her apology extinguished the flames of my anger, leaving me with nothing but a hollow ache. What could I say? I, the self-proclaimed genius who thought he had it all figured out, had been living in a script written by others all along. What I thought was the beginning of my easy life was actually a countdown to my death. My fate as a disposable character was, in reality, a blood debt paid for by my parents that I was now expected to settle. I collapsed onto the sofa, the sheer weight of the revelations threatening to crush me. There was shock, anger, regret, and a strange, unfamiliar flicker of warmth. That cold, distant woman had been carrying this burden and protecting me all along. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked the last and most important question. The silence on the other end of the line stretched on. Just when I thought she wouldn't answer, she spoke, her voice barely a whisper, heavy with a sigh. Because your acting was too good, Liam. You played the part of a man desperately in love with me, so perfectly, so convincingly. I couldn't tell what was real and what was the act. If I had told you the truth, and you'd let your emotions slip, even for a moment, it would have been over for all of us. So I had no choice but to let you hate me. After hanging up, I sat in that Zurich apartment all night, motionless as the city slept. The view outside my window was foreign, but my mind was playing a film of the last 3 years, replaying every moment with Victoria. It all made sense now. Why she always came home late, only picking at the elaborate dinners I made. She was afraid that too much time together would make me fall deeper into my role, and terrified that she would too. I understood why she never let me get involved in her business or attend important corporate events. She was building a wall to keep me out of her dangerous world. I understood the complex look in her eyes on the day we divorced. It wasn't disgust or relief. It was profound worry and a deep, hidden reluctance. And I, the arrogant fool, thought I made a clean, clever getaway. I'd mistaken her protection for charity, her restraint for indifference. I had even laughed at her cliché romance with Damien. A crushing wave of regret and guilt seized my heart, making it hard to breathe. And my parents, they hadn't died in an accident. They were murdered. And I, their son, had lived in blissful ignorance for years, not even knowing the name of the man who had destroyed my family. No, I couldn't sit back and do nothing anymore. Victoria and Damien were fighting my battle, risking their lives for my parents' memory while I was safely tucked away in Europe. Why should they? This was my family's blood feud. I had to be the one to end it. The next morning, I called Lynn. "I'm coming back," I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. "Mr. Carter, that's too dangerous. Arthur will have eyes everywhere, waiting for you." Lynn pleaded. "So what? This is my fight. I won't let Victoria stand in front of me like a shield. Tell me the plan. I'll cooperate." "No, not cooperate. I'll lead," I said, a fire I'd never felt before burning in my veins. I was no longer the side character trying to escape the plot. I was Robert Carter's son. I was Liam Carter. Lynn was clearly not authorized to make this decision and said she had to consult with Victoria. A few minutes later, my phone rang. It was Victoria. "Liam, calm down. This is not the time to be impulsive," she said. Her voice had regained its usual cool command, but this time I heard the concern underneath. "I'm calm," I stated. "Victoria, listen to me. First, thank you for everything. Second, start treating me like a partner, not a package that needs to be protected. Now, tell me, what exactly is the evidence my father left behind? And where is it?" This was the crux of it all. The reason Arthur was still hunting me was because he wasn't 100% sure that the evidence was truly gone. As long as it existed, he would never be able to rest. Victoria was silent. I knew she was weighing her options. "Your father was extremely careful," she finally said. "He split the evidence into two parts. One was a digital backup, hidden somewhere none of us know, protected by a specific encryption key. The other part, the original physical ledgers, he gave to your grandfather. But your grandfather had a sudden heart attack and passed away shortly after your parents' accident. Before he died, he only had time to tell my grandfather one thing, that he left the most important thing for you, hidden in the place where it all began and where it all ended. The place where it all began and where it all ended. What did that mean?" I racked my brain, trying to summon memories of my grandfather. I was only in high school when he died. In my grief, I hadn't paid much attention to the details of his estate. What had he left me? I inherited his old house and some of his books and personal effects. But I'd packed all of it up years ago, locking it away in the house's storage room, and had never looked back. "Could it be? I know where it is," I said, my voice trembling with excitement. "It has to be in the old house my grandfather left me. We've already had people search the house top to bottom, Liam. They turned it upside down and found nothing," Victoria said, her words a splash of cold water. "No," I shook my head. "You couldn't find it. That doesn't mean it isn't there. It's something only I can find." I had a powerful intuition that the clue was tied to something deeply personal to me. "I have to go back," I insisted. "Victoria, let me come back. We can't wait any longer. Every day we wait, you're in more danger. Arthur isn't stupid. He'll soon realize your reconciliation with Damien is a sham. When he does, he'll try to eliminate both of you without a second thought." A long silence hung on the line. I could feel her internal struggle, her conflict. Finally, she made her decision. "All right, you can come back," she said, her voice firm and decisive. "But you can't return as Liam Carter. In 3 days, a medical transport jet is flying from Zurich to New York. On board will be a comatose patient in need of urgent care. That patient will be your new identity." 3 days later, I was lying on a stretcher inside a Gulfstream G650, tubes attached to my body, convincingly disguised as a patient in a deep coma. Victoria's reach was astounding. She had fabricated a complete set of medical records for my new identity and had even hired a Swiss medical team to escort me. The moment the jet landed in New York, an ambulance was waiting on the tarmac for a seamless transfer. Through a crack in the ambulance window, I saw them, men scattered around the private airfield, trying to look casual but failing to hide their sharp, searching eyes. They were Arthur Grayson's spies. They would never dream that the man they were hunting was slipping right under their noses in the most audacious way imaginable. The ambulance didn't go to a hospital. Instead, it drove directly to a heavily secured villa, another one of Victoria's properties, even more secluded than our former home. Lynn was waiting for me at the door. "Mr. Carter, Victoria is waiting for you in the study," she said, her gaze holding a newfound respect. I walked into the study. Victoria was standing with her back to me, looking out the floor-to-ceiling window. She was wearing a casual cream-colored cashmere dress, her hair down, softening the sharp edges of her corporate persona. She turned as she heard me enter. Our eyes met, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. It was the first time since the divorce that we had looked at each other without a wall between us. There were dark circles under her eyes, and her face looked thinner. The stress of the past few weeks had clearly taken its toll. "Welcome back," she said, breaking the silence. "I'm back," I replied, my heart a tangle of emotions. "It must have been hard on you." She shook her head and walked over, handing me a glass of water. "Your friend, Leo, is fine. We got the best lawyers, and with pressure from the embassy, the Maldivian authorities cleared him of the bogus charges. He's back in the States now." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "Thank you." "Don't mention it," she said, then got straight to the point. "I have your grandfather's old house under 24/7 surveillance, but we can't make a move yet. Arthur's men are undoubtedly watching it just as closely." I nodded. "That's why we need to put on an even bigger show," I said, looking her straight in the eye. A flicker of confusion crossed her face. I laid out my plan for her, piece by piece. When I finished, Victoria's expression was one I had never seen before. Pure, unadulterated shock. "Are you sure about this? It's incredibly risky." "No risk, no reward," I said with a smile, but my eyes were deadly serious. "Arthur wants to find me. Fine. I'll walk right up to his front door. He thinks I'm nothing without the Sterling family's protection. Then let's show him what rock bottom really looks like." My plan was both simple and insane. I was going to walk into the lion's den. A few days later, a piece of gossip sent shockwaves through the city's elite circles. Liam Carter, former son-in-law of the Sterling family, is reportedly on the brink of bankruptcy after a series of failed investments and massive gambling debts. I had planted the story myself. I contacted a few old, fair-weather friends and had them spread the rumor. Then, through underground channels, I fabricated evidence of my supposed losses at high-stakes poker games in Macau. Overnight, I became a laughingstock. Everyone said I was a loser who couldn't function without a powerful woman propping him up. That once I left Victoria, I amounted to nothing. This was exactly the effect I wanted. I needed Arthur Grayson to believe I was a pathetic, washed-up nobody who posed no threat. Next, phase 2 began. I started liquidating my assets. First, the Greenwich estate was sold at a 30% discount to a shell corporation controlled by Victoria. Then, I started making inquiries with shady loan sharks, letting it be known that I was desperate for cash and willing to use anything as collateral. Of course, it was all performance. The loan companies were also fronts for Victoria. But Arthur didn't know that. From his perspective, I was a drowning man, flailing desperately before sinking for good. He finally made his move. One evening, I received a call from an unknown number. A man's cold voice came through the line. "Mr. Carter, our boss would like to discuss a business proposition with you." The fish was on the hook. "Who's your boss?" I slurred, affecting the tone of a desperate, impatient drunk. "You'll see. Tonight, 10 o'clock. The abandoned shipyard on the west side. Come alone." The line went dead. I put down the phone and looked at Victoria and Damian Grayson, who were sitting across from me. Yes, Damian was here too. His usual arrogant demeanor was gone, replaced by a grim seriousness. "Liam, this is too dangerous. Arthur is a lunatic. He's capable of anything," Damian said, frowning. It was the first time he'd ever called me by my first name. "I know," I said with a slight smile. "That's why I need you guys." Victoria's face was tense. She handed me something that looked like a cufflink. "This is a tracker and a listening device. It's also a panic button. The second you're in real danger, press it. Our people will be surrounding the shipyard, ready to move in." I took the cufflink, fastened it to my shirt sleeve, and nodded. "Don't worry. I'm not going there to die," I said. "I'm going there to take back what's ours." At 10 o'clock that night, I drove to the abandoned shipyard on the west side. The place was deserted, its rusted gantry cranes looming like skeletal monsters against the night sky. I got out of my car and walked into the largest warehouse as instructed. The interior was brightly lit. Dozens of burly men in black suits stood in two lines, their faces grim. In the center of the vast space sat a man in his 50s. He was balding with cold, predatory eyes. Arthur Grayson. And, standing next to him, was someone I never expected to see. My best friend, Leo, hadn't he been sent safely back home? What was he doing here? He refused to meet my gaze, his eyes darting away, filled with guilt. My heart sank into my stomach. A horrifying thought surfaced. The person who had sold me out, who had told them my location in the Maldives. Liam, long time no see. You look even more pathetic than I imagined, Arthur said, a smug, contemptuous smile on his face. I ignored him, my eyes locked on Leo. Leo, why are you here? Leo couldn't look at me. He stared at the ground, his voice barely a whisper. Liam, I'm sorry. They have my dad's company in a vice. I had no choice. I understood. It all made sense now. Arthur hadn't just bribed my acquaintances. He had turned my best friend into a pawn. So the setup in the Maldives. That was you. My heart felt like it was being squeezed. Leo squeezed his eyes, shut in anguish, and nodded. Mister, Grayson just wants to talk, Liam. He means you no harm. Leo mumbled, a pathetic attempt at justification. Shut up, Arthur barked, then turned his attention back to me, a cruel amusement in his eyes. Don't blame your friend, Liam. Blame your dead father for being a meddling fool. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. What do you want? I asked coldly. It's simple, Arthur said, rising from his chair. He walked up to me and patted my cheek condescendingly. Hand over what your father left behind. I'll even give you enough money to live out the rest of your days in some foreign country. Otherwise, he gestured towards a massive, glowing blast furnace in the corner. That will be your final resting place. I started to laugh, a bitter, humorless laugh that brought tears to my eyes. You think I came here tonight to negotiate with you? Arthur paused, a flicker of confusion on his face. I lifted my head, staring directly into his eyes, and said, enunciating every word, Arthur, I came here tonight to send you to hell. Before he could react, I slammed my hand onto the cufflink, pressing the emergency button. In that same instant, the night outside exploded with the sound of police sirens. Blinding headlights flooded the warehouse. NYPD, this is the police. You are surrounded. Drop your weapons and surrender now. A voice boomed through a megaphone. Arthur's face turned ashen. You son of a bitch, he roared, pulling a gun from his waistband and aiming at my head. His thugs scrambled, pulling out their own weapons. Leo collapsed to the ground in terror. Nobody move, I yelled, my voice cutting through the chaos. Arthur, look behind you. He instinctively glanced over his shoulder. In that split second, Leo, who had been cowering on the floor, sprang into action. He was holding a taser, and with a desperate roar, he lunged forward and jammed it into Arthur's side. Crackle! A brilliant blue arc of electricity flashed. Arthur's body convulsed violently, and he let out a strangled scream as the gun clattered to the floor. Everyone was frozen, stunned by the sudden turn of events. I dove for the gun, scooped it up, and aimed it at the bewildered thugs. Police are here. If you want to live, get on the ground now. Just then, the massive warehouse doors burst open. A flood of heavily armed SWAT officers poured in. Leading the charge was Damian Grayson, clad in a tactical vest, his face set like stone. Right behind him was Victoria. She wasn't in uniform, but her calm, commanding presence was as powerful as any weapon. The moment they saw the police, Arthur's men crumbled, dropping their weapons and putting their hands on their heads. The deadly standoff had been flipped on its head in a matter of seconds. Two officers pinned a sputtering Arthur to the ground. He craned his neck, glaring at me with utter disbelief. Leo, you betrayed me too. Leo scrambled to his feet, wiped a smear of blood from his mouth, and walked over to me, clapping me on the shoulder. So, how was my acting? He asked, flashing a familiar, mischievous grin. I looked at him and broke into a smile. The weight in my chest lifted. That's right. Leo's betrayal was also part of the plan. I was the one who told him to go to Arthur and surrender. I knew Arthur was paranoid. My feigned self-destruction wasn't enough to fully convince him. He needed an inside source he believed he could control completely. My best friend, Leo, was the perfect candidate. I was betting on Arthur's arrogance. He would never believe that a coward he was blackmailing would have the guts to double-cross him. And I had won the bet. Arthur Grayson was taken into custody. The illegal firearms found at the scene and his recorded death threats against me were more than enough to put him away. But the final nail in his coffin was the evidence I provided. When I led the detectives to my grandfather's old house, they were skeptical. The place had been searched multiple times. I walked them into my childhood bedroom and pointed to a framed photograph on the wall. It was a picture of me at my college graduation, standing with my parents and my grandfather. We were all smiling. I carefully took the frame off the wall, turned it over, and twisted a tiny, almost invisible latch. The back panel popped open, revealing a thin, hidden compartment. Inside were two items: a small, yellowed ledger, wrapped carefully in wax paper, and a simple, unremarkable USB drive. This was what my father, Robert Carter, had died to protect. My grandfather's cryptic clue, the place where it all began and where it all ended, referred to this photograph. It was the beginning of my family's pride and joy, and the last photo we ever took together. The most dangerous place is always the safest. No one would ever suspect that an object of such sentimental value held a secret that could topple a corporate empire. The ledger contained a detailed record of Arthur's money laundering activities. The USB drive held damning audio recordings of his conversations with his criminal associates and a full electronic trail of the embezzled funds. With this irrefutable proof, Arthur Grayson and his entire network were dismantled. The full weight of the law was coming for them. After the case was closed, Victoria, Damien, Leo, and I went out for a celebratory dinner. Damien raised his glass to me. "Liam," he said, his tone solemn, "I was a fool. I misjudged you, and I treated you poorly. I owe you an apology." He then downed 3 straight shots of whiskey. I smiled and clinked my glass against his. "It's all in the past. We couldn't have done it without you. I did it for Victoria, and to clean up my family's name," Damien said, glancing at Victoria. The affection was still in his eyes, but it was tempered with a newfound acceptance. "Victoria I lost, fair and square. He's a better man for you than I am." With that, he stood up and walked out, his pride intact. He was a smart man. He knew when a chapter was closed. Leo threw an arm around my shoulders, laughing. "See, Liam, I told you our acting skills are Oscar-worthy." I just grinned and shoved him playfully. After dinner, I drove Victoria home. The car was quiet, with only the soft melody of a song on the radio filling the silence. "So, what are your plans now?" she asked, breaking the quiet. "I don't know," I said honestly, watching the city lights blur past my window. "Now that it's all over, I feel empty. Maybe I'll take that money you gave me and finally travel the world." Victoria's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I never touched the account," I said, turning to look at her profile, "and I had the buyer return the deed to the estate." "Victoria, thank you for everything, but we're divorced." She didn't respond for a long time. Just as we were approaching her villa, she pulled the car over to the side of the road. She unbuckled her seatbelt, turned to face me, and her clear, brilliant eyes locked onto mine. "Liam, do you really believe that my marriage to you, from beginning to end, was just about fulfilling my grandfather's promise? That it was all just a plan?" I didn't answer, which was an answer in itself. She gave a small, self-deprecating laugh, and in it, I saw a vulnerability I had never seen before. "I admit, that's how it started. But, Liam, the plan never said anything about me falling in love with you." My heart skipped a beat. She looked at me, her eyes shimmering like constellations. "For 3 years, you said you were acting. So, tell me, was it an act when you woke up at 6 every morning to make me breakfast, rain or shine? Was it an act when you memorized everything I was allergic to and knew I took my coffee with milk and no sugar? When my stomach ulcer flared up and you stayed up all night brewing me special broths, sitting by my bed until dawn? Was that an act too? Liam, you might have fooled everyone else, but you couldn't fool me." Because she took a deep, shaky breath, because I was doing the same thing. "I would tell you to leave me alone, but then I'd sneak medicine onto your nightstand when you caught a cold. I pretended to forget your birthday, but after you fell asleep, I would wrap a gift you would never receive. I tried so hard to keep my distance from you, but every night, on my way home, I would look out at the city lights and desperately miss the one place that felt like home, the place that had you in it. I thought we were both just brilliant actors," she said, her voice thick with emotion. I never realized we had both fallen for the role and for each other. She had said so much, so fast, and by the end, her eyes were red. This strong, unshakable woman was, in this moment, completely defenseless. I was floored. What I thought was my own unrequited affection was actually a silent, mutual love story. What I had dismissed as a performance was, for both of us, the undeniable truth of our feelings. We had both used our logic to fight our emotions, terrified of getting too lost in the script, not realizing we were already hopelessly submerged. An overwhelming wave of regret, joy, and a love so powerful it hurt washed over me. I reached out and gently touched her cheek, wiping away a tear from the corner of her eye. "Victoria," I said, my voice full of an earnestness I didn't know I possessed. "My life, until now, has felt like a bad novel someone else wrote for me. But now I want to take the pen back. I want to write the sequel myself." I looked deep in her eyes. "So, Ms. Sterling, would you be willing to be the one and only leading lady in my new book?" She stared at me for a second, stunned, and then a beautiful, radiant smile broke through her tears. It was like the sun breaking through clouds, melting away all the ice and darkness, and illuminating my entire world. She didn't answer with words. Instead, she leaned forward and gave me the answer with a kiss that was gentle and sure, free of all pretense and plotting. This time, there was no script, just us, and a brand new beginning.